Today, we're getting into something, well, a little grimy.
Uh,
Pollution. We might not always think about it, but it's pretty much everywhere.
it really is. And that's why we're starting with, you guessed it, Wikipedia, the pollution article, to be exact.
Of course. Now, Wikipedia isn't always perfect, but it's a good starting point for a topic this complex, right?
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
Think of this as like our pollution 101.
I like it. Pollution 101. Okay, so back to basics.
Yeah.
What exactly is pollution?
Well, the EPA, they define it as, well, it's a bit of a mouthful, but basically any substances in water, soil, or air that degrade the natural quality of the environment, offend the senses of sight, taste, or smell, or cause a health hazard.
So anything that messes with our environment, basically.
Yeah, pretty much. And the UN, they kind of broaden that view, saying pollution is anything that causes undesirable environmental effects.
Okay, so it's not just about stuff that's, obviously gross or smelly.
Right, exactly. It's really about anything that throws off the natural balance of things.
Interesting. So it's more than just, like, smog or trash.
Way more. Think about light. Even light can be a pollutant.
Really?
Yeah, ever been stargazing and like all those city lights just ruin the view?
Oh, yeah, for sure.
Well, that's light pollution. And it's not just annoying for, astronomers and stuff.
Oh.
It can actually mess with our sleep cycles, for both people and the animals. And those nocturnal creatures, the ones active at night. Light pollution can totally mess with their navigation.
Huh, I never thought about it that way. I just figured it was, like, an aesthetic thing. Speaking of, what about visual pollution? That's got to be more than just ugly billboards, right?
It is. Think about those landscapes, scarred by mining,
Mm-hmm.
or all that space junk just cluttering up our orbit. That stuff not just an eyesore, it actually poses a risk to satellites.
Those satellites we depend on for, like, everything.
Exactly.
It's crazy how something that's, well, just ugly can have such a big impact. But not all pollution is our fault, is it?
No, not at all.
Yeah.
Mother Nature, she can pollute too,
Oh, yeah. Like what?
Volcanoes, for example. They're major polluters.
Wow, really?
Oh yeah, big time. One eruption can spew out tons of sulfur dioxide, that stuff that causes acid rain, and even heavy metals like mercury. That stuff can build up in the food chain. It's nasty.
Yikes. So even nature has a pollution problem. But let's be real, most of it is human-made, right?
Yeah, unfortunately. And the scale of it, well, it's pretty scary. Back in 2019, pollution was linked to about 9 million deaths worldwide.
9 million. That's what, like 1 in 6 deaths?
Yeah, 1 in 6. And air pollution, that was the main culprit. It just shows how much, relying on fossil fuels is costing us, both in terms of our health and the planet's.
That's a sobering thought. I mean, even the air we breathe can be dangerous.
It can be. And it's not just about human health either. A study just a couple years ago found that we've actually crossed a line. The levels of chemicals we've put into the environment, they've gone beyond what the planet can handle.
Really?
Yeah, they're literally everywhere. Deepest oceans to the highest mountains, disrupting everything.
Yeah. So we're not just talking about a few polluted rivers or smoky cities here, huh? This is a full-on global crisis.
It really is. And all those pollutants, they end up in our food, our water, the air we breathe, you name it. It's all connected.
Man, this is heavy stuff. It's like we're stuck in this pollution cycle, and it's impacting everything.
Yeah, the big problem.
So how did we get here? What are the biggest things driving this human-made pollution?
Well, a lot of it boils down to our everyday choices. Driving, using electricity, even tossing out the trash. All of it adds up.
I get that, but it's hard to connect, like throwing away a plastic bottle to, say, a dying coral reef,
I hear ya. But imagine, back in the early 1900s, U.S. cities had like 3 million horses for transportation.
Yeah.
All those horses pulling carriages and wagons.
Yeah.
Just picture the mountains of manure.
Oh, I bet.
Exactly. Now we've swapped horses for cars, but the idea is the same. We're still creating a mess, just a different kind.
From horse poop to smog, huh?
Exactly. And then there's the whole plastic problem.
Right.
The article mentions how microplastics from things like, synthetic clothes are ending up in the ocean. They're harming marine life and could even be entering our food.
That's just wild. It makes you think twice about buying, like, that cheap polyester shirt. So we've talked about individual choices, but what about the big polluters? Are some industries worse than others?
Oh, definitely. The article even have this list of the dirtiest industries.
Oh, yeah. Hit me with the worst offenders.
Well, right at the top, you've got things like lead acid battery recycling and lead smelting. Those are pretty much what you'd expect.
Yeah, makes sense. Anything surprising on the list?
Actually, yeah. The textile industry. It's listed as one of the biggest polluters globally, which might surprise people.
Really? The fashion industry?
Yep. They use over 8,000 different chemicals to make clothes and generate tons of wastewater.
Wow, I had no idea. I guess all those trendy clothes come with a hidden cost.
They do. And it's not just the production either. Think about all those clothes ending up in landfills after being worn, like a handful of times?
It's like fast fashion is catching up to us, literally. Any other industries we should be watching out for?
There's a lot of talk about the meat and dairy industry. A report back in 2018 claimed they're on track to pollute even more than the oil industry. It all comes down to things like methane from livestock and deforestation for grazing.
It's amazing, or maybe terrifying, how everywhere you look, there's some kind of pollution issue lurking. It all feels a bit overwhelming.
It can be.
Yeah.
But, all these systems, they're connected. What happens in one industry in one corner of the world, it affects everything else. And that's actually where we'll pick up in part 2. It's kind of crazy how these dirtiest industries lists, they change so much,
Yeah, you're right. It feels like every few years there's a new industry everyone's pointing fingers at. Like, remember when it was all about big oil?
Exactly. Now the conversation is way bigger, right? It's everything from fast fashion to the food we eat.
It really shows how much we're learning about pollution, all the complex ways we're impacting the environment.
And that's why these deep dives are so important, right? They keep us up to date and make us rethink what we thought we knew.
Okay, challenging assumptions is great and all, but starting to feel a bit heavy, Like, are we just doomed to choke on all this pollution? Is there any hope?
Well, the situation is serious, no doubt.
Yeah.
But there's a lot of really cool stuff happening in terms of pollution control, prevention, all that. It's not all doom and gloom, I promise.
Okay, good. So what are we talking about here? Give me the good news. How do we fix this?
Well, step 1 is awareness. Knowing the problem, like we're doing right now, the more people understand what causes pollution, the more they'll demand solutions.
Knowledge is power, right?
Mm.
But what's next? Is it all on us? Like remembering our reusable bags and stuff?
Individual stuff matters, for sure. But it's bigger than that. The Wikipedia article, it talks about this hierarchy of controls for pollution. And at the very top, the most effective thing is pollution prevention.
So instead of cleaning up the mess, we stop it from happening in the first place. Kind of like training your dog not to pee on the rug instead of just cleaning pee stains forever.
That's the perfect analogy. And it works for industries, too. Instead of cleaning up rivers, we prevent the waste from getting there in the first place.
Okay, yeah, I get that.
Hmm.
But how do we do that? New tech, stricter rules, what are we talking about?
It's a mix of everything. Redesigning products to be eco-friendly, instead of all those harsh chemicals to dye clothes, the fashion industry, they could use more natural dyes.
I've actually seen some brands doing that, using plant-based dyes or stuff made from recycled materials.
Right. There's some cool innovation happening. And tech solutions, too, like closed-loop systems to recycle water in factories and stuff. And, of course, stricter rules can force companies to clean up their act.
It sounds like there's a lot happening on the prevention side, but what about things like, I don't know, driving, electricity? Tougher to just prevent those.
Right.
We need energy.
True, but we can change how we get that energy. Shift away from those fossil fuels. Invest in renewables like solar and wind power.
Right, makes sense.
We can push electric cars, make public transit better, a whole system change.
A cleaner energy future, kind of exciting to think about, but a huge task, right?
It is, but don't underestimate the smaller stuff, too.
Yeah.
You can all walk more, bike, take the bus, get energy-efficient appliances. Every bit helps.
Yeah, sometimes it feels like your own actions don't do much. But when millions of people do it, it's got to make a difference, right?
Exactly. And collective action, that's huge too. When people get together, demand change, it pushes governments and companies to act. Like that movement to ban single-use plastics. It's really made a difference.
It's inspiring seeing those grassroots movements make things happen. So it's not all doom and gloom then. There's stuff we can do, both on our own A&D together.
For sure. The more we know about pollution, the better choices we can make, and the more we can demand those better solutions. And it's not always about sacrifice either. This can lead to innovation, new jobs, a better economy. It's all connected.
Yeah. Green tech, sustainable practices, that's the future. But all this talk about prevention, what about the pollution that's already here? Can we clean that up, or are we stuck with it?
There are ways to control and clean up pollution, even the stuff that's already out there. The Wikipedia article, it goes into some of that.
Okay, what kind of stuff are we talking about?
Well, for example, air pollution control systems. Basically, They filter out the bad stuff from, like, factories and power plants before it gets into the air. They're not perfect, but they help a lot.
So like a giant air purifier on a smokestack.
Pretty much. And for soil and water, there are ways to clean those up, too.
Like what? People in hazmat suits scrubbing the earth with toothbrushes?
Huh. Not quite that simple. There's this method, bioremediation, that's getting popular. It uses microorganisms, tiny little creatures, to break down pollutants.
So we're using nature to clean up our mess.
Exactly. Harnessing nature's power. And there's some really innovative stuff out there, like using plants to soak up heavy metals from the soil, or building artificial wetlands to filter out dirty water.
Wow, that's amazing. Nature-based solutions, I like it. But all this stuff, it's got to be expensive, right?
It can be, yeah. But remember, pollution itself is expensive. We pay for it in healthcare costs, environmental damage, all sorts of ways. It's not just about the money. It's about, people and the planet. And sometimes preventing or cleaning up pollution, it actually saves money in the long run.
True, true. It's like that saying, pay me now or pay me later, but the stakes are way higher.
Exactly. Ignore pollution now, future generations pay the price. And we're talking serious economic costs. The article mentions a study just in the U.S. The cost of freshwater pollution is over $4 billion every year. Think about the medical bills, missed work, damage to ecosystems that give us clean water, fertile soil, all that.
Wow, $4 billion. That's a lot of money down the drain, literally. Makes you realize protecting the environment, it's not just some nice ideal, it's crucial for the economy too.
100%. Investing in pollution control, prevention, it's investing in our future. And there's another cost that's hard to measure, the loss of biodiversity. All the amazing plants and animals, the damage to those ecosystems that support everything.
Yeah, you can't put a price tag on a healthy planet. It's not all doom and gloom, though. We've got options, things we can do as individuals, as a society, finding those solutions that work for the environment and the economy.
Couldn't agree more. The more we learn about pollution, the better choices we can make, and the more we can push for real change.
Thinking about all these solutions, it's crazy how much our view of pollution has changed, like over history. The Wikipedia article, it even talks about that.
It really has. Imagine living in a city where horse manure just piled up in the streets, or factories pumping out black smoke. Like, nobody cared.
It's wild to think about. Like, when did we decide, hey, breathing toxic air or drinking dirty water, that's not okay anymore? Makes you wonder what we're still ignoring today.
That's a great question.
Yeah.
I'm sure there's stuff happening right now that, future generations are going to be horrified by.
Probably, yeah. But it shows progress is possible, right? We've come a long way in terms of environmental awareness, laws, all that.
Oh, for sure. But it seems like it often takes a real tragedy to wake people up,
Yeah. The article mentions the Great Smog of London back in 1952. Thousands of people died. It was awful.
Wow.
That event, it really changed things, forced the government to take air pollution seriously, led to some of the first real environmental laws.
It's sad that it takes something like that, but those events, they can be a turning point. Remember that river in Ohio, the Cuyahoga River?
Oh, yeah, the one that caught fire?
Exactly. Back in '69, it literally caught fire because it was so polluted.
Crazy.
That was a huge wake-up call for the U.S., helped kickstart the whole environmental movement.
It's amazing how those images, a river on fire, a city choked with smog, they can really change people's minds. Visual storytelling, it's powerful.
Totally. And those pictures of the Great Pacific Garbage Patch, that giant swirl of plastic in the ocean, that's had a similar effect on people. Makes you realize how much plastic we just throw away.
And how it impacts marine life. All those sea turtles and whales tangled up in plastic or eating those tiny microplastics, it's heartbreaking.
It's a classic example of how it's all connected. Our actions here on land, they have consequences in the ocean. It's a global problem, needs global solutions.
Pollution, it doesn't care about borders, right?
Right.
So where do we go from here? What are the big takeaways from our pollution deep dive?
Well, I think the biggest thing is remembering that pollution, it's complicated. It's not just about dirty air or water. It's about, all these human activities messing up these delicate natural systems. And those systems, they're way more interconnected than we realize.
Right, we can't just fix one thing and expect everything to be fine. It's about seeing the big picture, understanding the root causes.
And the human cost, don't forget that. Millions of people die every year because of environmental hazards. Pollution, it's not just some abstract problem. It impacts real people's lives.
Yeah, especially in communities that, are already struggling. It's a good reminder that this is about real people. But hey, it's not all bad news, right? We've talked about some cool solutions, innovations that are happening. There is hope.
Exactly. We can make a difference. I really believe that. Raising awareness, making good choices, pushing for change, all of it helps build a healthier future for us and, future generations.
I love that. It's so easy to feel overwhelmed, but it's empowering to remember we're not helpless. Every action counts, even the small ones.
We don't have to wait for the government or big companies to act. We can start making changes today, right now.
Totally. Less plastic, buying sustainable products, supporting organizations fighting for the environment. We all have a role to play.
So next time you're going about your day, think about the choices you're making. Are you adding to the problem or are you part of the solution?
Great question for our listeners to think about. What changes can you make to lighten your impact? Remember, every little bit helps.
And if you want to learn more, there's tons of great resources out there. Books, documentaries, organizations, all kinds of stuff.
Thanks for joining us on this deep dive into the world of pollution. We hope you learned something new and feel inspired to take action. Until next time, stay curious, stay informed, and stay engaged.